Who would think that my passion, the activity I find absolute joy in, could have long-lasting, damaging effects on me? Unfortunately, this irony has become a major part of my life. The activity that brings me the most happiness is dance. I know that no matter what crazy, hectic events I have going on in my life at any particular moment, I can find a release from all the chaos through dancing. I feel completely at ease when I'm given the opportunity to lock myself in a room, away from all stress and all tension, and just let the music guide me. However, this feeling of pure pleasure is erased the minute I look at myself in a mirror. This is when the self-critiquing begins. I shouldn't have eaten that slice of pizza. Why did I skip yesterday's workout? I will never find success or happiness unless I lose those few pesky pounds. These are all thoughts that start crossing my mind. It is so difficult to escape the mindset set in place by the dance world, the one that says that I must achieve the ideal body in order to find success, when I have been immersed in this culture for the majority of my life. At age 8, I was formally introduced into the dance world and greeted with wide open arms. Although I was somewhat apprehensive at first, being a self-proclaimed tomboy and all, I couldn't help but fall in love with my beginning level jazz dance class. My very first dance teacher was such a sweetheart, who besides teaching us the basic technique of jazz dance, gave us a new level of confidence by exposing us to exercises that would bring out our inner attitude. After my first few months of dancing, I began walking with a newly found self-assurance. Something, however, that began to wane as soon as I was presented with my very first dance costume. I couldn't have been more excited the day my dance teacher announced our recital costumes had finally arrived. My class had been working so hard for months on our recital dance, and the costume was just going to be icing on the cake. When I saw the costume and tried it on for the first time, I discovered it to be a little red, sequin-covered, two-piece outfit that I immediately fell in love with. All of us girls began parading around the room, admiring our new costumes, and showing them off for our parents and our teacher. The next week, we had a professional photographer come to class and take individual and group shots of my class, donning our costumes and full stage makeup. I loved posing for the camera and felt that I looked just like the cutest thing. When the photographs arrived in the mail a few weeks later, though, I noticed something that I hadn't previously been aware of. My stomach wasn't quite as flat as some of my dance classmates. And while we all looked just as happy as each other, the differences in each girl's body began to become apparent to me. At the time, I didn't let it bother me too much, but the realization that I wasn't as thin as the other girls my own age was nonetheless eye-opening. The following year, I competed at my very first dance competition, where the energetic nature of the dance competition world became infectious for me. I loved watching the dances of other dance companies, and began closely eyeing the dancers that performed on stage. Besides admiring the artistry of the dances, I carefully observed that the leaner, longer girls were placed in a more central location of formations near the front of the stage, while the slightly heavier girls were more often situated in the back of dances, where it was more difficult to see them from the audience's perspective. This only further enforced Jill Green's idea that in the dance world, there is only one acceptable way to see the dancer. I quickly decided after this realization that in order to achieve my goal of becoming a star competition dancer and being consistently placed front and center on stage so that I could be noticed, it was only necessary that I have strict control over my body. This sentiment only strengthened the older and more actively involved I became in the competitive dance scene. As the number of dances I competed with increased, so did the number of costumes I wore. However, there was something ironic about the nature of my dance costumes. As my age increased, the amount of fabric used to comprise the dance costumes decreased. It is easy to see this natural progression with the costumes I wore at age 11 compared to the ones I wore at age 14. Clearly, the style of dance costumes has gone through a drastic transformation. It became perfectly acceptable for competition costumes to consist simply of pieces of lingerie adorned with rhinestones, or even converted costumes meant for adult dancers. While some dancers were able to wear these sorts of outfits that exposed every physical flaw without a problem, I found it increasingly difficult to do so. Brenna Price and Terry Pettijohn support this feeling of mine by addressing that wearing tight-fitting clothing that accentuates body features may be partially responsible for increased body concerns. I felt that instead of being judged solely on my dance ability, my body was constantly being looked at with a critical eye by the other dancers at competition, a belief that further caused a downturn in my self-esteem.
I've been walking in the same way as I did.
The increased self-awareness I developed over my body was only reinforced the more time I spent in the dance studio. As I became more and more competitive, I began spending even greater amounts of time in dance class, where there was a strict dress code. Nowhere else did this affect me more than in ballet class. Black leotard and tights. This simple, skin-tight attire required for ballet left very little room to conceal any body blemishes. A reference made in Jill Green's article to a college-age dancer echoes perfectly with what I thought the moment I stepped into ballet class every day. When I enter class, I look around to see who is smaller than me and think about how big I am. Not only was I forced to wear clothing that made me extremely uncomfortable, I was forced to do so in a room completely surrounded by wall-to-wall mirrors, where there was nowhere else to look but at myself and the other dancers in class. Because one of the goals of dance is to create a piece of art where there are many girls moving in sync with each other, it was necessary to compare what my body was doing at a particular moment with the other girls' bodies. However, I couldn't just look at the motion of our bodies without comparing them on physical traits as well. These mirrors I was forced to stare into for hours and hours on end were seen as what Melinda Planey calls an ominous and powerful presence that contributes to physical self-evaluation, behavior regulation, body objectification, and competition.
Where are we? What?
Unfortunately, the more I developed a passion for dance, the more it interfered with another passion of mine, baking. Growing up, my mom was known by our entire family as the dessert queen, and those baking genes of hers were definitely passed on down to me. I would love spending time with her in the kitchen, assisting her in the baking process, and, of course, stealing some tastes here and there from the mixing bowls and spatulas she used. Looking at myself, adding some sprinkles to cookies, my face clearly shows that I mean business in the kitchen. Nothing did I enjoy more than helping my mom bake a dessert and then enjoying our delicious creation afterwards. However, as soon as I entered the dance world, my entire mindset regarding desserts changed into an extreme love-hate relationship where tremendous guilt would plague me every time I allowed myself to splurge on a sweet treat. I fought a constant battle, not only with desserts, but with food in general, where I couldn't even enjoy a slice of my friend's birthday cake without shame creeping on in. This conflict between my love of desserts and the idea that I must conform to a particular body type is something that, even today, I struggle with on a daily basis.